Hello everyone, my name is Elijah David, minister of the 12th Hour Apostolic Sabbatarian Congregation outside the 12th Hour in Liberty Hill, Texas. Today is June 29, 2013. It is the 21st day of the 4th month, 2017. We will start our first service today with a song entitled, I Am Thine, O Yahweh. I am thine, O Yah, I have heard thy voice, and it told thy love to me. But I long to rise in the arms of faith and be closer drawn to thee. Draw me near, 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 blessed Yah, to the cross where thou hast died. Draw me near, 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 blessed Yah, to the precious bleeding side. Consecrate me now to thy service, Yah, by the power of grace divine. Let my soul look up with a steadfast hope, and my will be lost in thine. Draw me near, 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 blessed Yah, to the cross where thou hast died. Draw me near, 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 blessed Yah, to the precious bleeding side. Oh, the pure delight of a single hour that before thy throne I spend. When I kneel in prayer and with thee, my Yah, I commune as friend with friend. Draw me near, 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 blessed Yah, to the cross where thou hast died. Draw me near, 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 blessed Yah, to the precious bleeding side. There are depths of love that I cannot know, that I cross the narrow sea. There are heights of joy that I may not reach, till I rest in peace with thee. Draw me near, 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 blessed Yah, to the cross where thou hast died. Draw me near, 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 blessed Yahshua, to that precious bleeding side. Hello everyone, once again this is Elijah David. We're going to start a new series entitled The Great Paradox by the B.T. Hartef. Great Paradox of the Ages, Part 1. Folks, pay close attention. B.T. Hartef is the author of this track and these charts that you see here in front of you. And as we zoom it up a little bit closer, trying to give you an idea of what we're talking about here, it says that this fourth chariot represents Laodicea. This chariot is a church. Okay. Now it has a double span of horses, meaning that it has a double leadership. The other three chariots only has a single leadership. This was a church at the Apostles' Day. This red horse represents the martyrs that was in that church, that was taken over by pagan Rome and martyred by ecclesiastical Rome and pagan Rome. And actually that went on for 1,500 years. Martyrdom under those two, under these two beasts. And this great paradox, these horses and these four chariots, is found in Zechariah 6:6, where your prophecy is at. But the two beasts that's responsible for the martyrdom of all of the Christians from the cross up to 1500 AD when Martin Luther came out of the Catholic Church and broke the back of the Catholic Church and started slowing down their killing of the Christians, the apostolic Christians. And so this team of horses right here is white team of horses, and this chariot right here denotes those Christians that followed William Miller. The black horses here pulling this chariot shows they went back into Babylon. But a single team of horses pulling a single chariot representing a church. These chariots were chariots of Israel in their time. Okay, this double span of horses is and this chariot they're pulling is Laodicea, the Seventh-day Adventist Church. So that's why it's called the Great Paradox of the Ages, is because the Laodicean Church contains this great paradox. Now, for the Seventh-day Adventists and for the Davidian Seventh-day Adventists, the Shepherd's Rod people, this should be highly enlightening for you, because I know that you have never understood this. Even when V.T. Hollis wrote it, you understood it at the time that he taught it, no doubt. But what the deal is it don't have any meaning to you today. But this is where we're at, the unfolding of this great paradox now in the truth and in reality. So we'll revert back to where we were at, and let's start with page 1, the introduction. Elohim has precious light to come unto his people. When new light is presented to the church, it is perilous to shut yourself away from it. To condemn that which you have not heard and do not understand will not exalt your wisdom in the eyes of those who are candid in their investigation of the truth. And then, and to speak with the contempt of those whom Elohim has sent with the message of the truth is folly and madness. Elohim will glorify his word that it may appear in a light in which we have never before beheld it. Light will come unto every earnest seeker for the truth, as it came unto Nathanael. There should be liberty given for a frank investigation of the truth, that each may know for himself what is in the truth. If a message comes that you do not understand, take pains that you may hear the reasons the messenger may give. Now I'm going to give you a reason for the true meaning of this great paradox that's found in the Adventist Church today. Okay, now it says, for your position will not be shaken by coming into contact with error. No one of those who imagine that they know it all is too old or too intelligent to learn from the omnibus of the messengers of the living Elohim. Testimonies on Sabbath School Work, page 60 to 66. As every important incident in connection with the church, the Seventh-day Adventist Church, is preceded by a message, and as every such incident has been foretold by the prophet, it is important for each to realize the need of the prophecy. Never in the annals of the Christian church has there been a shaking the like of that which is rapidly increasing as a result of the circulation of the Shepherd's Rod series of the books and tracts throughout the rank and file of the Seventh-day Adventist denomination, where it presents a singular and perplexing problem which human wisdom is utterly powerless to solve. In this extremity, then we must turn unto the divine wisdom. Both the struggle and its remedy must be found in the prophecy. Gladly, therefore, we accept the challenge. Ask me of things to come, concerning my son, and concerning the work of my hand. Command ye me. Isaiah 45:11. Only when the church finds herself grounded on a reef of her own folly, with the fierce waves of the divine retribution beating over her sides, is she in a position to realize her dreadful danger and her need of everything. And only when thus endangered and alarmed can she possibly be aroused unto the absolute necessity of the having a gift of the prophecy. Her most imperative need in her present predicament. Surely the Yahweh Elohim will do nothing, but he revealeth his secret unto his servants the prophets. Okay, Amos 3:7. These are spiritual gifts, but rather that ye may prophesy. He that prophesieth edifieth the church. 1 Corinthians 14:1-4. Now I'm a prophet, and I'm the antipode Elijah, and I am prophesying unto the Adventist church. But the testimony of Yahshua is with the spirit of prophecy, Revelation 19:10. Consequently, if she does not awake unto the fact that where there is no vision, the people perish, Proverbs 29:18, then she never will. Okay, emphasizing the importance of the gifts of the Spirit, Paul says, and he gave some apostles and some prophets, and some evangelists and some pastors and teachers for the perfecting of the saints, for the work of the ministry, for the edifying of the body of the Yahshua. Ephesians 4:11-12. After that, miracles, then gifts of healing, helps, governments, diversities of tongues, 1 Corinthians 12:28. But while most of these gifts, especially those of the tongues and of the governments, are zealously sought after by the churches, the one that was despised by the Jews, the gift of the prophets, is wholly rejected by almost all Christendom. Therefore, the spirit that instigated the killing of the ancient seers at the hand of Jewish leaders is today doing virtually the same sort of the destructive work through the organized religion. For the Jews, while ascribing praise and honor unto the dead prophets who were slain by the forefathers, rejected the living prophets, thus bringing upon themselves the Master's mournful pronouncement. Woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, because ye build the tombs of the prophets and garnish the sepulchres of the righteous, and say, if we had been in the days of our fathers, we would not have been partakers with them in the blood of the prophets. Matthew 23:29-30. For the present day Christians who despise the gift of the prophecy and deny unto the gospel dispensation the authority of the Old Testament scriptures, thereby reject all the prophets, though at the same time they do them the lip service of acknowledging them as the service of Elohim, and giving such service, they are but building and garnishing the tombs of the prophets, as did the Jews. But when tested, they too will be found to be liars. More lip professions of the believing in the whole Bible are worse than no profession at all, and doubly so when the professors are at the same time teaching that all the laws and statutes, all the warnings and condemnations apply only unto the ancient Jews, whereas all the graces belong unto the Christian church. By following in this course, they have been led so far in the perverting of the gifts that the so-called gifts of the tongues is naught but gibberish, and is no more the biblical gift than is Sunday, the sanctified Sabbath day. Perverted also is the gift of the governments, which is degenerated into an institution of the prerogatives, formality, goals, and the like, which were they ever beneficial devices, are certainly in their present low estate nothing but agencies which in effect militate against the truth and neutralize the piety of the church and the state of the affairs. Do the best of these professed Christians of today seem better than the worst of yesterday's Jews? Wherefore, O church of the Elohim, awake, awake, quench not the spirit, despise not prophesying, prove all things, hold fast that which is good. 1 Thessalonians 5:19-21. Loose thyself from the man-wrought bands of thy neck, O captive daughter of Zion. Isaiah 52:2. As the gift of prophets is according unto the Scriptures, second in the order of the gifts, unto the congregation and the gifts of governments and that of the diversity of the tongues are last. Obviously then, those who despise the gift of the prophecy, but exalt the gift of the governments and the gift of the tongues, are pulling the cart from its rear end and are going in the wrong direction. To such Yeshua is saying, knowest not that thou art wretched and miserable and poor and blind and naked? Revelation 3:17. Come now and let us reason together, saith the Yahweh. Though your sins be as scarlet, they shall be as white as snow. Though they be red like the crimson, they shall be as a wool. Isaiah 1:18. For this condition underlies the present church trouble, which along with its outcome is figuratively set forth in the Zechariah's prophetic symbolism. And here's the paradox. And I turned and lifted up mine eyes, and I looked, and behold, there came 4 chariots out from between the 2 mountains. This reading is taken from Zechariah chapter 6, verse 1-8 in the King James Scriptures. Now here's what we're talking about. H.T. Hart's talking about. Here in Zechariah 6, you got these 4 chariots. You got the red, the white, the black, and you have this 4th one representing the Laodicean church, the Adventist church, with the grizzled horses, the bay horses, and the grizzled horses pulling the king. Okay. Now, a double leadership only in this 4th church. And the Adventist church started in 1844. So the double leadership was at the very beginning of 1844. Who represented the double leadership? The bay horse represents a pure leadership, somebody that has the office of inspiration, a prophet or a prophetess. Ellen G. White fits that description. And these horses are actually represents leaders. They're pulling the church. So apparently the Adventist church, the House of Israel, is supposed to be movable. She's supposed to move around. Not just build her a headquarters somewhere and stay stationary. She's to go out and really, the bay horses do what the Spirit instructs them to do. They want to go to and fro through the earth. Right here you are, to and fro. But the grizzled horses, the other leadership in the church, only want to go back to the South Country where they came from, to Asia. Okay, so now Ellen G. White represents the bay horse leadership. Who represents the grizzled horses? None other but her husband, James White. He married her and gave her a good name, White, but he also wanted to be the leader of this church. But Ellen G. White had already been appointed over because she was connected to that chariot first. She was right next to the chariot. So the second team of horses has to be connected second. So when Ellen G. White married, Ellen G. White took charge of this church in 1844. She married James White in 1845. He represents this second team of horses, a grizzle, and so he connects up second to the bay. The bay was connected up in 1844. The grizzled horses was connected up in 1845. Okay. James White represents these grizzled horses. Now, when the Seventh-day Adventists rocked along there in 1863, they decided they wanted to form an organization like all the churches around them. And so they wanted a nice church stationary building. They wanted a headquarters. They wanted represent Yahweh's government here on earth, the house of Israel. So they felt like that they had to be organized and show a unified front through organization. So James White helped get a group of men together, and they formulated the General Conference of Seventh-day Adventists. Now, I forget who's the name of the first president, but James White, I think, was the second president of the General Conference after it formed in 1863. Now, so when the General Conference formed, whoever was the president of the General Conference represented these grizzled horses from then on. And whoever succeeded the office of inspiration, Ellen G. White, then they represented the bay horse leadership, continuing on pure doctrine. Okay, the grizzled horses represents confused doctrine. Now, 1890 was the first test of this church, the Adventist church. Yahweh sent two messengers, Jones and Wagner. He said, now, they have a message, righteous by faith. This new light, the Ellen G. White already presented, she told them so at the Minneapolis conference there in 1888, at the General Conference. She said, men, she said, and people, these messengers, Jones and Wagner, have additional light to what I've already brought, receive their message, and you'll be in the kingdom by 1890. Oh my, that's just 2 years. That's just 2 years from now, according to that. But they didn't want that. They wanted to go back to Egypt because the General Conference represented these grizzled horses that was well taking this church back to Egypt because they were in the lead. And this is a strange thing. They were placed in the leadership role after these bay horses was placed in the leadership role. Okay, so now, this church, this fourth church, let us see it, born in 1844, with a double leadership. Okay, now, these leaders, the Bay and the Grizzle, are the fourth group of laborers called to work in the vineyard. And you find it Matthew 20, verse 5, they were called at the 9th hour. In other words, at the close of the 9th hour, they were called. And as I showed you before, this chart right here, here's your 9th hour right here. But the 9th hour ended right here in 1844 at the top of the 10th hour. When you start an hour, you have to call at the top of it. When you fulfill the hour, then you fulfill it at the top of the next hour. Okay, so when the 9th hour was fulfilled, William Miller had the 9th hour, and the top of the 10th hour was Matthew 20, verse 5, the call of the 9th hour laborers, the Seventh-day Adventists. They were that fourth group of laborers called in the parable of Matthew 20. Remember, there's 5 groups of laborers called to work in the vineyard. Okay, the first one was the early morning laborers, starting with Moses and children of Israel coming out of Egypt. The next one, the second group of people, were Yeshua at the cross with the disciples. They were the second group of laborers, called in Matthew 20, verse 3. Okay, and then the third group of laborers, you find that in Matthew 20, verse 5. That was those that's called at the top of the 7th hour. In 1833, William Miller and Company, First Day Adventist, they worked these 3 parabolic hours, 7th, 8th, and 9th, up to 1844. Now they were the third group of believers. They would call it the sixth hour. In that same verse, Matthew 20, verse 5, it also said the sixth and ninth. The ninth group of believers, the Seventh Day Adventists, called here at the end of the ninth hour, 1844. And they're the fourth group of believers here in that parable of Matthew 20. There's one last group left, and that's those that is called at the end of the 11th hour. This is top of the 11th hour in 1970, but at the end of the 11th hour, at the top of the 12th hour, then you had a fifth group of believers called Matthew 20, verse 6. Okay? Now, they occupy this whole 1 hour, 12th hour to sundown. Sundown, you start the first hour of the night, and you end your 12 hours of your daylight. Okay. Been through that before, but it's good to go over and over it because this double leadership, as we're going to learn, this double leadership found in Laodicea, the Seventh-day Adventist Church, is there from 1844 up to 2003. About 160 years all told. Okay, this double leadership operated throughout the course of the whole Judgment of the Dead period. The Judgment of the Dead period from 1844 to 2003. And when that 2003 was over, to close out the Judgment of the Dead, you also started the Judgment of the Living, Revelation 8, and you cut off this here grizzled horses. And you retire them to the south country where they had already arrived. Because this is where this chariot ended up, with the bay horse leadership. Now let's continue to talk about this double leadership as it transferred from one leader to the next. Now we done got you up to 1888, 1890. But these grizzled horses continued on being led, or their leaders continued on representing these grizzled horses, the General Conference President of Seventh-day Advent. And so whoever had inspiration, and Ellen G. White, these bay horses, she continued to be the leader of this church representing these bay horses up until her death in 1915. All right? So now, who did the bay horses, who took charge of the leadership of the bay horses after Ellen G. White died? It was her successor, no doubt, M.L. Andreessen, the highly regarded minister, professor of the Adventist Church. And he wrote the 3 little booklets, Isaiah the Gospel Prophet. The Adventist Church thought so much of it that they had it published in their quarterly, Sabbath School Quarterly, in 1929. B.T. Holoff, the one that was to succeed M.L. Andreessen in the leadership represented by these bay horses, was a little Sabbath school teacher in the Adventist Church at the time that M.L. Andreessen published these 3 little booklets, Isaiah the Gospel Prophet. And those 3 little booklets taken in 13 chapters of Isaiah, chapters 54 through 66, the last 13 chapters. And those last 13 chapters in Isaiah, from 54 through 66, is for the judgment of the living, is for the 12th parabolic hour that we're in right now. That's what B.T. Holoff was projecting at that time. When he got inspiration on that, because he was a Sabbath school teacher in the Adventist Church at that time, out there in Loma Linda, California, and Riverside, California, 1929. Okay. So anyway, when he began to interpret M.L. Andreessen's message of Isaiah the Gospel Prophet, then the Adventist Church got alarmed. These grizzled horse leaders, representing these grizzled horses, this General Conference, sent their spies into B.T. Holoff's camp, into his class one day where he was teaching And they said, you can't teach this in this church. They said, well, I'm taking it right out of the Sabbath School Quarterly that's already been published and printed by one of your highly regarded ministers. You've accepted it. You said publish it. They said, well, we can't tolerate you putting your interpretation on it. And he said, well, and so that's when they kicked him out of the church, and he moved across the street to a two-story house. One of the members of his Sabbath school class said, we can go across the street and continue on with this study. They got up and marched right out of that Sabbath school class, right then and there. They marched across to her house, and they continued on with that Sabbath school study. The Bay Horses, represented by B.T. Hollis, now taking charge of the Bay Horse leadership. Pure doctrine. Connected directly to this church, Seventh-day Adventist Church. And who did he pull out of the Adventist church that followed him? Seventh-day Adventists. And they're the ones that ride in this church. The laity is the one that rides in this church. So it showed right that the Bay Horses took charge of the church. But the Grizzle horses, still being connected to the front of them, wouldn't allow them to function in their church. So, since the Grizzle horses actually were not the leaders of this church, but they were connected to it, controlling this church, because they were the lead team. But this church didn't belong to them. It belonged to these Bay Horses. But they got connected to it because they hijacked the church. Okay? They hijacked the church. Just like the first century, Rome, Imperial Rome, hijacked the Apostolic Church and stole the keys that was given to Peter, claiming that they had the keys passed on to them. Okay, let us go on. So now, 1930, B.T. Hollis, he is representative of these here Bay Horses. Pure doctrine connected to the Adventist Church directly. So the General Conference, so they stayed connected to the team and that church, so therefore they were still in control of the direction that the Adventist Church is to go, at least the majority of it. But the Bay Horses had a lot of influence, and they got a lot of the remnant of the Adventist Church to follow them. 1955, B.T. Hollis dies. Okay. Now, I'm going to read you a scripture here in Zechariah 13 that talks about this here shepherd that died, that got smitten. It says in Zechariah 13 verse 1, it says, in that day there shall be a fountain opened in the house of David. Now, B.T. Hollis was the one that opened that fountain, because he represents the tribe of Judah, the house of David. He even named his movement the Davidian Seventh-day Adventists, taken from the name David. Okay, it says, in that day there shall be a fountain open in the house of David, and unto the inhabitants of Jerusalem for sin and for uncleanness. So now these Bay Horse leadership of B.T. Hollis is the one that opened up this fountain of David in 1930, started the Rod movement. Okay? And it shall come to pass in that day, saith the Yahweh of hosts, or saith the Yahshua of hosts, that I will cut off the names of the idols out of the land, and they shall no more be remembered. And also I will cause the prophets and the unclean spirit to pass out of the land. And it shall come to pass that when any shall yet prophesy, then his father and his mother that begat him shall say unto him, Thou shalt not live, for thou speakest lies in the name of the Yahweh. And his father and his mother that begat him shall thrust him through when he prophesied. And it shall come to pass in that day, and that's the day we're in right now, the 12th Tetrabolic hour, the last days, that the prophets shall be ashamed every one of his visions. So all those false prophets in the Adventist church, and the Davidian Seventh-day Adventists, and including the last one that I was with for 33 years, Brother W. Johnson. They apostatized. Brother Johnson started out as a true prophet. He apostatized at the end. He got tired of waiting. He assured the days he's coming for 33 years, and Brother Johnson didn't like it. He wanted him to come in 1974, only 4 years after he started his movement. He wanted it right now. Okay, and it shall come to pass in that day that the prophet shall be ashamed every one of his visions. When he hath prophesied, neither shall they wear a rough garment to deceive. Brother Johnson made so many prophecies that didn't come to pass for 33 years, it's unreal. Okay? But he shall say, I am no prophet. I am an husbandman, for man taught me to keep cattle from my youth. And one shall say unto him, what are these wounds in thine hands? Then he shall answer those with which I was wounded in the house of my friends. Awake, O sword, against my shepherd, and against the man that is my fellow, saith Yeshua of hosts. Smite the shepherd, and the sheep shall be scattered. B.T. Holiff was smitten in 1955. And what happened to the Davidians, which was made up of nothing but a collection of Seventh-day Adventists that had joined them over the 25-year period, that's who the Davidian shepherd rods were. Nothing but Seventh-day Adventists had come out of Mama's church. Okay. They were the remnant. They were the hungry ones when Bashan first feeding pasture for the Adventists dried up in 1930. They were hungry. They wanted fresh produce, so they found a new feeding pasture called Mount Carmel, Shepherd Rock. And so they found a new feeding pasture, and so a remnant of the Adventists out of Bashan comes to the second feeding pasture, and that's where they fed for 25 years until their shepherd was smitten. Now, just about all of those shepherd rod people dissolved. They went back to join the Adventist church. A lot of them went back out into the world. But just less than 100 people followed on a new leader that succeeded B.T. Holiff after he was smitten. And that he says right here, he says, awake, O sword, against my shepherd, and against the man that is my fellow. So the sword is the word. Prophesied in Scripture that this man has done his work, B.T. Holiff has done his work, and that he should be taken out of the way. Okay, so that prophecy can continue on to be fulfilled as Yahweh designed it, not according to how this man, B.T. Holiff, designed it. So he had to be taken out of the way in 1955, and he says, awake, O sword, against my shepherd, B.T. Holiff, 1955, and against the man that is my fellow, saith the Yahweh of hosts. Smite the shepherd, and the sheep shall be scattered, and I will turn mine hand upon the little ones. Okay? You'll have a few little ones left after sheep are scattered. And they're the ones that carried on then into the next feeding pasture, because Mount Carmel dried up in 1970 with this new leader, Ben Roden. Now this is another point I want to bring up about double leadership. B.T. Holiff represented the leadership for the Bay Horses, and the General Conference for the Seventh-day Adventists continued to represent the leadership represented by these Grizzle horses. Well, the General Conference didn't dissolve in 1955 when this leader here was smitten, B.T. Holiff, the Bay Horses. But B.T. Holiff had a successor, Ben Roden, that took the reins. And he took the reins of this church right here, Ben Roden. He took this here Bay Horses leadership. Or did he? Look what happened. In 1946, there was two men brought to B.T. Holiff, And they were two elders that was introduced to join the Shepherd Rod, and that was Brother Study Johnson and Ben Roden. Brother Johnson was 15 years younger than Ben Roden. So Ben Roden, being the elder, he had the birthright to succeed B.T. Holliff in 1955. And so he automatically assumed the leadership of the Grizzled Horses. But he ended up being anti-Ishmael, born of faith. Brother Study Johnson took the leadership of the Bay Horses in 1955. So we had the double leadership continue on with two dissimilar fellows. Two dissimilar servants. They all served at the same time, both of them served at the same time, and they both wanted to be in line to inherit the leadership of this church. Unbeknownst to Brother Study Johnson, the one that I served under for 33 years, he was connected directly, because it proved out that Ben Roden, his elder, that took the reins at the time that B.T. Holliff died, Brother Johnson then had to serve Ben Roden, the Grizzled Horses. For 15 years, Brother Johnson served Ben Roden, the Grizzled Horses, for 15 years. Okay, now Ben Roden was also cut loose in 1970. All right. Then Brother Johnson, I joined the church leadership of the Bay Horses in 1970. So when Ben Roden was cut off in 1970, representing his Grizzled Horses, Brother Johnson stepped right up and took the leadership of these Grizzled Horses. And when I joined Brother Johnson, me being 21 years younger, he had the birthright to be the lead king. Brother Johnson did, 1970. And a new feeding patch for Gilead. Okay? So now, what happens? The Bay Horses then is one that I'm in charge of. I didn't know it at the time. Brother Johnson didn't know this at the time. Ben Roden in his time in 1955, and Brother Johnson didn't know. See? So now Ben Roden and Brother Study Johnson were in the 10th hour. Now keep in mind that Ben Roden and Brother Johnson, and now myself come into the picture in 1970. Now keep in mind that we're all part of the fourth group of laborers called in Matthew 20 verse 5. And there's still one more group to come. And these Grizzled and Bay Horses are operating in the fourth period, in the fourth group, with the fourth group of people. I was part of the fourth group. Okay? I am now head of the fifth group in Matthew 20 verse 6. Those called at the end of the 11th hour. Okay? Those called right here at the end of the 11th hour in 2003. And that's when the fifth group showed up. And this fifth group then will be the ones that will bring the church to purification during this 12th hour. So I worked with the fourth group of laborers, and now I am working with the fifth group of laborers. Okay, now let's get back to our reading of the paradox. And B.T. Holliff has got this on this little tract here. He's got a picture of this same thing that you're seeing right here. And so I want to mention that these double team of horses that's been pulling this chariot of the Adventist chariot for 160 years. Was all during the fourth group of laborers. And I had my part in that for the last 33 years of that 160 years of the Judgment Day. I had my part as co-leader with these Grizzled Horses. Okay, now, this great paradox talks about these two descendant servants that showed up in the form of antithetical Esau and Jacob. Okay, so now, let's go and fast forward to page 36 of our tract, The Great Paradox. And we're going to read about this double team of horses from 1970 on to 2003. We're going to read about it. All right, it says the Grizzle and the Bay, the double leadership, and in the fourth chariot were Grizzle and Bay horses. So, this is your fourth chariot. This one came out in the first century. This one came out 1,800 years later, along with these black horses with William Miller and so forth. But now the fourth one came out between these two brass mountains. B.T. Harvey's got it. He's got it between 1844. And then he's got these Grizzle horses joining the Bay horses in 1890. But I don't go along with that. The prophecy says just point blank that the fourth chariot had a double span of horses, and when it first appeared in 1844, then they two were together. Okay, and so although I identified who represented the Grizzle horses with James White, the husband of Ellen G. White, that represented the Bay horses. So I've already brought you through that. So now it says, and in the fourth chariot was Grizzle and Bay horses. The anomalous part of this symbolical prophecy is manifestly that the fourth chariot, unlike the other three, has a double span of horses. But most arresting about the whole symbolism is the paradoxical fact that the Grizzle went toward the south country, and the Bay went forth and walked to and fro through the earth, Zechariah 6, 6, and 7. The Grizzle go one way and the Bay another way, and yet both are pulling in the same of the same chariot. Obviously, therefore, this strange circumstance must hold a singular present truth lesson of the great importance unto the Seventh-day Adventist congregation of the Elohim at the present hour. And what hour are we in? The 12th hour, at the very time that this prophecy is unfolding. So this is the hour that V.T. Holiff is projecting. Okay. When the vision has been opened, okay, so it says that obviously, therefore, this strange circumstance must hold a singular present truth lesson of the great importance unto the congregation of the Yahweh at the present hour, when the vision has been opened and the truth unfolded, the time in which the congregation is confronted with a strange and perplexing problem which human wisdom is at a loss to solve. So, we know in the world today, no doubt, the Adventist has got its greatest problem it's ever had since it came into existence, since 1844, and that is that they are totally lost without chart or compass. They're adrift at sea without any rudder, no chart or compass, or any anchor. And so that's where we're at today. If Yahweh don't send antitypical Elijah to open up these prophecies and show the church her real true condition and publish it to the world, then Yahweh's going to come and smite this earth with a curse. Malachi 4, 1 through 6. Now it says, for the dissimilar teams, Bay and Grizzle, hitched to the fourth chariot, each pulling in a different direction from the other, show not only that there is a double leadership in the Laodicean church, but also that the one is opposed unto the other in character as well as in purpose. This condition being a strange one, the wise will well consider it, seeing that the word of the Elohim has spoken it, and that the symbolism perfectly describes the contest which before their very eyes is taking place, he will tenaciously take a hold of the truth. You've never seen any contest take place until we got to 1970, the Gilead Center, with Rhodes Johnson as the lead team. That's when these two teams showed up as contesting one another for 33 years. From 1970 to 2003. Now for the explanation of the climatic and enigmatic part of this symbolization, we must go unto the past and present record of the Laodicean congregation. As a message unto every congregation is addressed unto the angel who has the charge of the candlestick, the congregation, Revelation 1:20, John was instructed, and unto the angel of the church of the Laodiceans write, Revelation 3:14. But this angel cannot be a heavenly angel, for he is at fault. Now we're talking about this here, grizzled horse leaders here, represented by Rhodes Johnson. Now there's two horses here. So Rhodes Johnson had anointed his son to be his associate pastor. He ordained and anointed him to be his successor. At the very time that we started our movement in 1970 together, I also joined, but I was representing these bay horses. And so, at the time, Rhodes Johnson represents these grizzled horses, but I'm just saying, he did have an associate pastor, Daniel Johnson. Okay, now they're cold nor hot, and they both run the church for 33 years, unhindered, but wretched and miserable and poor and blind and naked, and no, it's not, Revelation 3:16 and 17. What else could this angel be but the earthly one who is given charge over the candlestick, over a seventh candlestick of Laodicea, Revelation 3:14. Plainly, therefore, he and the servant whom the Yahshua hath made ruler over his household to give them meat in the due season, Matthew 24:45, are identical, both of whom clearly represent the church leadership, not the membership. And it is so ironic that Rhodes Johnson and I look so much alike, even up close. I think I've got a picture of him and me together, but when we were running around with long white beards there in Kermit, Texas, people would see us together, and they would call Rhodes Johnson by his right name. Because when they saw me by myself, they would call me Rhodes Johnson. And one lady in Kermit, Texas, that worked down at the courthouse, she thought there was only one person, Rhodes Johnson. When she saw Rhodes, she called him Rhodes. When she saw me, she called me Rhodes. And one day she called me Rhodes, and I said, I'm not Rhodes, I'm Denton Grumpy. Oh, you're not Rhodes? But if Rhodes was to walk up and stand beside me, I'd say, no, this is Rhodes. But when she saw us separately, she didn't know the difference. Okay, anyone having a reasonable knowledge of the scriptures should know that Elohim cannot finish his work on earth with a wretched and miserable and poor and blind and naked leadership. And what is worse, one that does not even know its condition. Those who are excusing the overwhelming wickedness everywhere are not Elohim's true people. They are the terror, the seed of the evil one. The message Elohim sends through his servants, says the spirit of prophecy, will be scorned and derided by the unfaithful shepherds who tread down with their feet the feed of the pastures, giving the flock as food that which they have defiled. Woe be unto the pastures that destroy and scare the sheep of my pasture, says the Yahweh. Okay. So Gilead Center is the third feeding pasture that Rhodes Johnson was put in charge of, the angel of the seventh candlestick. Now also, this angel of the seventh candlestick, Rhodes Johnson, represents these grizzled horses. Now when that angel was spewed out in 2002 at Kermit, Texas, cut out of his traces, cut loose from the bay horses, That represents the spewing out of the angel of the seventh candlestick, let us say. 2002, closing out the judgment of the dead period. Now it's time to start the judgment of the living with the pure leadership. And now it's called Mount Zion, the 12th hour, house of the mountain of the house of Yahweh. Elijah David being in charge now of antithetical David's kingdom here on earth. That was an everlasting kingdom when Yahweh made a covenant with David way back there 3,000 years ago, that he would establish his kingdom forever. He said, I've done with King Saul, your predecessor, if he'd been obeyed all my commands, I've done with him. And since he disobeyed all my commands and wouldn't do none of them, he said, I rejected him and I appointed you and I set you upon the everlasting throne of the everlasting kingdom that was reached at the end of time. So here's your bay horses representing the everlasting throne of David that come through the annals of time. Okay, we're getting close to the end of our studies this hour. I guess we may as well be looking at a song here and seeing what we're going to close it with. Let's go ahead and close it out. We're going to close it with a song entitled, Come Thou Fount of Every Blessing. Come thou fount of every blessing, in my heart to sing thy grace. Streams of mercy never ceasing, offer songs of loudest praise. Teach me some melodious sonnet, sung by flaming tongues of fire. Raise the mountain fixed upon it, mount of thy redeeming law. Here I raise mine Ebenezer, hither by thy help I'm come, and I hope by thy good pleasure safely to arrive at home. Yahshua sought me when a stranger, wandering from the fold of Yah. He to rescue me from danger, interposed his precious blood. Oh, to grace how great a debtor daily I'm constrained to be. Let that grace, Yah, like a fetter, bind my wandering heart to thee. Prone to wander, Yah, feel it, prone to leave the Yah love. Is my heart, Yah, take and seal it for thy course of